I played 30 plus games of the brand new Plague DK, and here are the things that I learned, some of which actually surprised me. One thing that didn't surprise me is Helia is absolutely the best card in the deck. If you're able to get this down on turn 4, it goes a long way to being able to close out your opponent. And the only thing better than a turn 4 Helia is actually a turn 3 Helia. Early in the game, we want to look for Staff of the Primus. Just being able to shuffle these plagues is going to be really valuable as it helps out the rest of the plague package. And keeping in mind, if you equip this on turn 1, I don't see any reason to not swing into your opponent's face. It's only 1 damage, but typically shuffling the plagues is going to be much more valuable than saving the 1 damage to be able to hit your opponent's minions. That is going to be a little bit matchup dependent, though. Distress Cavalier is somewhat of an interesting card. I found that I don't like keeping this in the mulligan unless we're specifically against a control deck. Its main purpose is really just to be able to shuffle 2 plagues into our opponent's deck. Playing this out when you have the 2 mana can be good, but you never really expect this to be able to hit your opponent in the face. If you do, it's just gravy. Tomb Traders have proved to be a valuable removal. One thing that I would encourage you to think about here is don't tunnel vision, oh my gosh, I can't afford to destroy a plague in my opponent's deck. It's somewhat likely that they never draw the plague anyway. You're going to be much better off removing your opponent's board and putting a 4/3 in play than to save that 1 plague in the deck and potentially have to fight for the board in other ways. Sylvanas, surprisingly, I thought would be hard to infuse in this deck, and I found that it's actually not. The infused Sylvanas can be very, very strong. Being able to steal your opponent's Titans feels very good, very, very powerful, and sometimes being able to play the uninfused version just to remove a minion proved to be pretty valuable with the game plan that we have in this deck. A lot of times we're actually just trying to stall the game out, force our opponent to be able to draw more plagues. The Chain Guardians, sometimes it can be good to actually just tempo this out on the board. The 8/5 with Reborn, your opponent is going to have to address, otherwise they're going to be potentially taking 8 damage to the face. And then of course sometimes we're actually just going to play this as a form of removal. In a lot of situations you'll be able to remove 2 big minions with it, and that can be really, really valuable as we're fighting against our opponents. The rest of the deck outside of the Plague package revolves around really being able to try to slow the game down and stall it out, so that we have more time to be able to shuffle plagues and to finish off our opponent in that way. And one important note of something that I unfortunately learned is that if your opponent plays Steam Cleaner, you're likely going to lose. A good opponent will hold this card until you've shuffled most of your plagues into their deck, and then they're going to play it, removing all the plagues from their deck and kind of taking away our long-term win condition. If you're against a slower moving control deck and you see them play an ETC, likely they're going to be pulling out their Steam Cleaner, and you can save yourself some time and some heartache by just going ahead and conceding on the spot. Could be worth playing it out, but in the end I found that a lot of times they're going to play their Steam Cleaner and you just lose. In one game I was actually playing against a control deck that played the Jailer. Again, this destroyed all of the plagues that were in their deck. Fortunately, I still had a couple of plague cards that I could shuffle in. If their deck is empty and you shuffle in plague cards, they're going to draw all of their plague cards. Hopefully by that point we've been able to play Helia so that they get reshuffled, but they'll draw how many ever plagues are in their deck, and then they'll take their fatigue damage. The cards are then shuffled again for the next turn that they draw, so just keeping in mind that the Jailer, again, can remove all of your plagues. You don't want to play around it, but when you see it come down, it's going to be a feels bad moment. Overall, the deck has been pretty enjoyable for me. It's nice to be able to have a Death Knight deck that plays in a little bit of a different way. It's just really bad, I think, that they have a Steam Cleaner card that can potentially remove your entire win condition. That one tech card ruins an entire archetype. Outside of that, Plague DK definitely on the more enjoyable side of Death Knight decks. Death Knight, of course, a class that's been relatively stale, with most decks ended up being a triple blood, triple frost, or triple unholy deck. This deck offers us a little bit of a different playstyle. And here you can see the results of the 30 plus games. I came across with a 56% win rate. And the thing that I've learned is that each matchup can be just a little bit different. Looking at the mulligan, I would always keep Staff of the Primus and Helia. I've also been keeping Rune Forging just to have the opportunity to be able to tutor out Staff of the Primus. It's really good to get this early and start shuffling plagues. Other cards that you could consider keeping based on the matchup, if you're expecting something that's going to be aggro, that's going to be playing a lot of early minions, you could consider keeping the Bonebreaker. Also, a Plague Strike could be pretty good. I don't like keeping down with the ship in those matchups. I would rather try to go for some of the more powerful cards. Plague Strike, obviously a little bit stronger, being able to potentially remove 2 minions versus the 1 minion down with the ship. Things that I've learned in the specific matchup, you can see here, I was undefeated against Death Knight. 4 of these matches were actually mirror matches. Helia, again, extremely important in the mirror match. And then just shuffling as many plagues as you can and being able to keep the pressure on your opponent as best you can. Likely a coin flip in this match on who's able to shuffle the most plagues and kind of get the most high rolls there. I only faced 1 Demon Hunter and lost. The matchup felt unfavored. Again, I only had 1 game here, but Relic Demon Hunter proves really tough. I thought we would actually be favored in this matchup, Relic Demon Hunter drawing lots of cards with the location Relic of Dimensions, but sometimes the plagues are just a little bit too slow, and then they kind of hit a critical mass as those minions get really, really big with the summons from the relics. Against Druid here, actually went 2-2, 50%, and what I found against Druid is that the matchup feels unfavored if you're against Nature Druid, which is what I saw all 4 of these games. They tend to be able to get down the drum circle with both effects, and then you just lose. There's too many taunts in the way, and the plagues up being a little bit too slow. If you're able to pressure their health total early, it can go a long way. Being able to get down minions like the Distressed Cavaldir and even Thessarian can help out quite a bit, and of course being able to get down Helia as early as possible. Sometimes a well-timed Frost Plague being drawn can slow down the Druid just enough to be able to help us get there. In the Hunter matchup, you can see here 75%. Overall, it felt really good. Against Hunter, I actually liked keeping a hardcore cultist. If they get the 4/1s early in the game, they're able to put down multiple 4/1s. Hardcore cultist and even the Tomb Trader can clean that up really, really well. We don't want to be afraid to play the Tomb Trader and destroy a plague in our opponent's deck. Again, just being able to remove that board and remove the threat can be really, really good. All these matchups were against more secret and aggro-oriented decks. Haven't actually faced Big Beast Hunter, which I feel like could be a really hard matchup for this particular deck. Against Mage here, 4-1. Mage, one of the more popular classes that are on the ladder right now. This was, of course, the Rainbow Mage, where they're playing lots of different spell schools. And what I found is that we were actually able to play more of a control style, removing their minions, making sure that they can't deal a whole lot of damage. Hardcore Cultist and the Tomb Trader, allowing us to make sure that they don't get a really good Deathborn. And then just kind of whittling them down from there, making sure that we don't take damage and allowing our plagues to do work. 2-0 against Paladin. The matchup felt really good. I think I played against Mech as well as Pure Paladin here. Again, the removal from things like Down with the Ship and Plague Strike early to be able to make sure our opponent doesn't have a board. And then Hardcore Cultist and Tomb Trader again against these board-based decks. Just works out really, really well. We prevent our opponent from being able to develop a board, and then they can't kill us. Again, as the plagues are slowly ticking away, potentially giving us 2/2s, healing us, or slowing down our opponent. Against Priest here, 0-4. I will say, I think I conceded on turn 1 in at least 3 of these, maybe all 4. Matchup is likely really bad. Remove everything Priest is a tough, tough matchup. And of course, in the Renathal version, they're likely going to be running an ETC with a Steam Cleaner, in which case you may as well just concede. You're going to be much better off concede turn 1, get into the next game, and go about having fun. Your Hearthstone rank doesn't matter. Save yourself the trouble against the Priest. Against Rogue here, 1-2. All 3 of these were Mech Rogues, and what I found is that when the Mech Rogue plays a Forged Lab Constructor, it's just too much to overcome in a lot of cases. The one game that I won, by the time the Forged Lab Constructor came down, you have to remove both of those minions the turn that it comes down, otherwise they just snowball out of control. Chain Guardian was clutch there. I think I had a Staff of the Primus early to shuffle Plagues. I had a Helia early to shuffle Plagues. And I was able to get the Chain Guardian down for only something like 4 or 5 mana. It allowed me to remove 2 10/6s that would potentially replicate themselves. It's the only way you're going to win. You have to be able to clear that rogue board every single turn. Otherwise, you just end up getting overwhelmed. Actually, no games against Shaman. No idea how this matchup would go. 4 games against Warlock, 1-3 here. What I found I was playing against mostly was the Chad Warlock that's going to be getting out the early Thaddeus with the Amorphous Slime. Forge of Wills and Imposing Anubisath, or potentially got the 7/7 with Rush and a 7/7 with Taunt in the way. If you can sneak in some damage early, continue to remove their minions and shuffle plagues, you can potentially get there, but overall I would say the matchup feels unfavored. Darkon Drothier coming down and healing for 6 and having lifesteal, just a really, really tough matchup. And then going into the Warrior matchup here, I actually played against this once on mobile against the Odin Prime Warrior. I did win that matchup, and what I found was if you can keep minions on the board early to be able to pressure your opponent, make sure that they don't feel comfortable playing their Odin when they find it and when they have mana, kind of stall out the game, force them to draw more cards, hopefully force them to draw more plagues. And then once the Odin comes down, you can potentially play the Primus, the Undead rune, to be able to get the 2/3/3 taunts with Reborn, preventing your opponent from being able to punch you in the face. And then also a shout out to the Nerubian Vizier here. If you can discover Tomb Guardians, the 4 mana, summon 2 2/2s, and with 4 corpses give those Reborn, it can really go a long way just being able to put taunts in the way. If their hero can't hit you in the face, they're going to have a really, really hard time being able to kill you. No idea if that matchup is actually favored or not, but you want to stall it out as long as possible and then hopefully be able to play some taunts in order to be able to stop them. That's the matchups, that's the mulligan, that's going to do it for the video. Thank you so much for watching. If you've enjoyed the content, please consider the like button and the subscribe button. I'm Uncorrupt, and good luck out on the ladder.